alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a guest who I've been circling for a little while. I've been paying attention to his interviews on other shows for a while. Nathan Lowell, welcome to the show, Nathan.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Well, it's good to have you here. I mean, it's always been fun listening to your guest appearances on other shows. But anyway, that said, those shows are moving to the past now. They're receding as podcasts do into history. And I gotta ask you to introduce yourself briefly, and what have you been up to lately?
I'm Nathan Lowell, full-time self-published novelist. What I've been doing mostly is writing and publishing. It's one of those things. The more books you publish, the more money you make. So, I said that the more books you publish, the more books you publish, the more money you make. Or the better the chances are anyway. So I got
to roll those dice more often. Yeah.
That's right. The more often you roll, the more tickets you buy, the more likely you'll win. So I just released, gosh, what is it? Number 18.
Oh, crazy. That's a lot of books. Is that all in one series?
Today. No. The Solar Clipper series is actually got 6, 3, 9, 12, plus 2, 14 in the various Solar Clipper branches. The first 6 books are the shares that start with quarter share and end with owner share. And then there are the Seeker's Tales that are the tales of what happens to Ishmael Huang after the shares. And then there's a spin-off. Okay. Then there's a spin-off series called The Smuggler's Tales that looks at the Western Annex from a different point of view. And in January, I released the second of the Shaman's Tales, and I just started the third one this morning. So we'll see how that goes.
So you have rolled the dice a fair amount, even recently, but yeah.
Well, last year was tough. Last year was Cape Grace. Last year was the second of the Shaman's Tales. It was tough.
Oh, we're having some connection issues here, but that's okay. We'll roll with it. So you were saying about the Shaman's Tales.
So last year I didn't actually publish a book because I was trying to write the second book in the Shaman's Tales. The title is Cape Grace, and I finally released it in January. But it was a very difficult book because it had to go between 2 other books that already existed. So it's the middle book, but it's not free on either end. And so I had to find the story that would fit in the middle. And understanding that the ending of that book had to be something that was rather unpleasant, because the ending of that book feeds into the second book in the Share series, Half Share. And we learn about what happened in the past. And then I had to write that story about being in the past. It was not a pretty story. It was a very hard story to write. I had all kinds of trouble getting it to be where I wanted it to be. But trying to write it for 10 years. And finally last year was the year where I said, we're going to write it this year. And I did.
Wow. So did that take you most of your productivity for the year, or was it just a really challenging element?
But it took all of my productivity for the year. It took all.
Wow. Of it. It was, I mean, I've taken that long in books. I know people take a year to write a book sometimes, but that sounds like really a big difference from how you write a lot of your books.
Well, I wrote 300,000 words last year, but I only kept 100,000.
Oh, okay. Oh, that happens. Yeah. That happens.
So I was able to save some of it and move it off to the next book, because I'm going to write a third Shaman's Tale to close off the loops, and I was able to save some of it. So I'm hoping that Troy Harbor is going to go a lot faster.
Okay. Yeah. So you got And then you wrote some fantasy back in the day. Is that not? Are you not really marketing that right now, or is it still?
Ravenwood, the
Yeah.
the
Was that a
Kenneth
one-time deal or?
the Kenneth Fairport Adventures. There's three of them, and
Okay.
they're in audio production at the moment, but the files haven't come back to me yet.
I see.
I really like that universe, but the science fiction universe has kept me engaged for like the last 5 or 6 years, 7 years.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. That's actually really. How do you? I mean, I gotta say though, actually, because I mean, I have ADHD. Regular listeners of the show will hear about this a fair amount. I switch between books and series all the time in my process, and I'm trying to find a way to either write books fast enough that I don't have to change my process fundamentally, or I have to unravel it and write the same series for a while, you know?
That was the challenge for me.
I'm not sure. How would you recommend doing that? Yeah, if you have any ideas for that.
Well, I'd finished the 6 shares, and then I wanted to write 2 trilogies. And my idea was that I was going to write the first book of one trilogy and the first book of the second trilogy and trade back and forth because they were different crews and different perspectives and different problems. And what I discovered was that I had made a timing error, so that I wanted the third book in one series. It needed characters that had to have completed the other series. So I wound up doing 1 and then 1 and then 2 and then 2, but then I had to write the immediate 3 before I went back and finished. So it was a bit confusing in my head, but it worked out pretty well. I liked the way the stories came together in the end. For me, in October when it came, it was really clear that I wasn't going to get another book published last year. So somebody in one of my author groups pointed me at For the Words. Do you know For the Words?
For the Words, yeah.
And I went and I looked at it, and these people were talking about getting 5,000 words an hour, 6,000 words an hour, writing.
Wow.
And they were just playing the game For the Words. And I thought, that's silly. And so when I looked at it, and the game is, you look at the game and the game looks really cheesy. I mean, it's really kind of cutesy. And I'm thinking, is this really something that I want to do? And so it was a 30-day free trial, and I signed up for it, and I took the trial. And I got to the end of the trial. I got to like the end of the first week of the trial, and I said, okay, I'm in. I'm buying. Where do I sign? Take my money. It was ridiculous. And so
that's a good sales pitch. The game did it itself. The site worked for you.
The site
did exactly what it's supposed to do. You know.
Yep. And it worked. It did its thing. And so I started thinking about how can I increase my productivity. And I thought, well, if I can get just 2,000 words a day, every day in the morning, that leaves the afternoon clear to work on things like second drafts and putting formats together and doing all the other things that you have to do to be a self-publisher. So my goal, starting 156 days ago, wait a minute, I've got the number. The number is 158 days ago. My goal is to write 2,000 words a day in the morning and then do the production work in the afternoon. So this is sometime in October last year. Since then, I've written 419,000 words. I've finished 4 first drafts. I've published 2 books. I currently have 3 works in progress, including the one that I started this morning. I have a second draft going for the one that I finished yesterday. And I've got one that I'm writing with a co-writer, and she has the manuscript at the moment, so it's on her desk. It's not on mine. So we'll be passing that back and forth until we get it together. So for me, the answer was try something different, because after a while, what you always did doesn't work anymore. And so what I always did was that I always did the binge writing, where I wouldn't write anything for several weeks, and then I would write, 200,000 words in a month and a half. And that didn't work for me anymore. And so 2,000 words a day doesn't, for what my normal output could be when I binge write, 2,000 words a day doesn't seem like very much. In fact, the statistics say that I write that 2,000 words in between an hour and a half and 2 hours every day. It's relatively constant. Getting the focus to stay in those writing modes for 2 hours over the course of a day is sometimes a challenge. The other day, it took me till 7 o'clock at night to find 2 hours that went together. But that was, it's not like there's not a lot of stuff going on for everybody. And so the distraction level is cranked up to 11.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, with distractions being as prevalent as they are, especially, I mean, the world's always in trouble in some way, and never more than now, honestly. It's what it feels like to me. But also, there's all these personal things that are going to come up during the day. Like, little things can throw me off still. That really is one of the things that hurts the most for me. Yep. You know?
Yep.
Is the little, somebody said something to me in the morning. Oh, now I'm miserable. Like, I'm not going to do anything all day. I'm pretty erratic in that regard.
Yeah.
Just consistency is really valuable. Yeah.
Consistency. I'm focusing on consistency. My goal for 2020 is 2,000 words a day, every day. New words a day, every day. And then I sort of shifted my model, the way I thought about writing. So in the past, I always thought, well, this year I'm going to try to write 4 books. And I would spend a lot of time thinking about what the 4 books were going to be, and how, who were the characters, and what were the themes, and how is that going to happen. And I would only write 2 books or maybe 3 books, and I couldn't get 4 books together. So by shifting over to saying I'm going to write 2,000 words a day, new words a day, the metaphor is that I'm holding a hose. I'm not lining up buckets, like, okay, I'm going to put 4 buckets of words together over the course of the year. I'm holding a hose, and there's going to be 2,000 words come out of that hose every day. And my goal is to just put a container under the hose and catch them. So yesterday I finished a book. Today I started a book. Which is
right, but it's kind of a flow. Yeah.
It's not quite true. Yesterday I spent free writing and trying to envision what the story was going to be like, and putting down 2,000 words of sort of internal brainstorming, and actually I never work from outlines, but I built an outline. I like the outline. It's a complex story. It's going to be complicated to do. So I built an outline. I don't know if I will actually follow it, but that process of organizing my thinking about the novel before I started actually to write the novel, I think will hold me in good stead as I go day to day to day to day. This morning I got 2144, so 2,144 words before 8:30 this morning. And so the rest of the day was working on getting The Wizard's Butler out. Speaking of fantasy, I just did publish an urban fantasy today, which will be two weeks ago when this goes out. But it's out now. So I published a book today. I got my words in today. I didn't get any editing done. I didn't get anything else done. But I celebrated. I took the afternoon off. I played games. I didn't worry about it, because getting that milestone built and achieving my daily goals was worthy of taking a little time to celebrate and to take some downtime.
Yeah, so you publish 3 or 4 books a day. I know some indie authors try to not a day, a year. Sorry.
Yeah, not a day. I would like to do. I'd like to do 4 a day, but that's not going to happen.
Oh, if that was even possible for one person to do, I mean, then we'd all be out of a job practically. That person would have all the money, but not really. But more books than that come out every day. What am I talking about? Anyway. I was going to say 4 or 5 books a year, right? It's more or less the rate you aim for.
That's what I've been shooting for 4 books a year. I've already got
Or
2
you've been
out.
aiming for it. Yeah.
And I've only managed to get 2 or 3.
Okay.
This year I've published 2, and I have 3 more in the pipeline, and it's only March.
Yeah, exactly. We've only had 2.5 months.
Yeah, basically.
That's pretty crazy.
So if I could get 4 books out, that's as good as the first year. The very first year that I started writing was 2007, and I got 4 books that year and podcast them. In fact, I think I got the whole podcast for South Coast out before the end of the year, in 2007. So I wrote 4, podcast 4, and I've never been able to hit that number again. But this year,
don't jinx it.
I was going to say I need to find someplace to knock on wood here, because I got 2 out. I got 3 in the pipe, and I still have a few months left in the year.
Yeah. Okay.
If I manage to maintain my average, I will put out a 100,000 word novel, or a novel, which is I classify as 100,000 words. I'll do that every 50 days. So, how many days?
4, 5 or 6 more at this point. Yeah.
At this point, it could easily be.
Wow, that's impressive, and you don't, and yet you're not writing a crazy number of words every day. You're just making sure they're all clean and finished by the end of the day, more or less, right? I mean, or you're able to revise them. On other days where you're also writing, is what I mean.
On other days, yeah. I write 2,000 rough draft new words in the morning. That's my first task of the day, is 2,000 new words. So when I get up, that's what I do. I write 2,000 words. I go onto my game. I go onto For the Words, and I see what quests do I have to fulfill, and what monsters do I have to defeat in order to do the quest, and I line them up for how many of them is going to give me 2,000 words, or whatever I need for the day. And then I start the timer and turn on the background noise and go.
Off to the races, yeah.
And try to stay on it until I've hit 2,000 words. It doesn't always work, but the beauty of it is that my goal is really 2,000 words in a day. And if it takes me 3 hours in the morning, fine. If it takes me 2 hours in the morning, fine. If it takes me until 7 o'clock at night, fine. I'll have 2,000 words that day. And that's the goal. That's the consistency. And now I've got the 158-day streak. I don't want to break that.
Oh, absolutely. But also the other thing I've noticed is, because you're not taking time off from writing to revise. That's the thing I kind of was talking about before.
No.
You're still writing something every day. Even when you're revising dead.
I'm sorry, I write something new in the morning, and then I revise in the afternoon. But the book I'm revising is not the one that I'm writing. It's the one that I finished.
Absolutely. I have a question for you about that. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Would you ever consider doing it the other way and edit the words you just wrote each day?
No.
Okay. That's what I was just curious. I wanted to make sure that was clear.
No. The difficulty with editing as you go is that until you write, there are 2 words that you need to write before you can revise anything. And those 2 words are the end. Because until you see the whole story, it doesn't make any sense to try to fix up the first chapter or figure out what's going on in chapter 6, because that might not matter once you get to the second draft. Once you can see this, once you can see the story in front of you, then editing makes a little more sense. At least for me, I've never been able to go back. I've never found it to be useful to go try to clean up stuff as I go. I want to get as many words. I want to get the story in front of me so that I can figure out, okay, does this character really belong here? Should this character go away? Are these 3 characters actually one person? Does this theme sort of emerged? I wasn't planning on it, but it's pretty good. Do I want to boost it up? Do I want to bring this one in and push the other one down? Or is this character acting weirdly in this particular section? Or, I can look at the whole story once I have it in front of me. And because, like you, I'm a discovery writer for the most part. I don't know what the story is going to be until I write the end.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, sometimes I've written the end, and then I'm like, oh, I need to go back and add a lot of stuff. I've got to the end point, but there's a lot of stuff missing. I definitely underwrite sometimes.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's I do. I think my second drafts are generally a few thousand words longer than my first.
Yeah, by a few. I mean, I'm writing epic fantasy right now, and the book I'm working on. I wrote the first draft. I finished the first draft in like December, maybe late November, and it was 95,000 words. And I'm like, that's not really an epic fantasy, but also it's not done at all. There's nothing there. Probably have half the book or like 2/3 of the book at most.
Yeah.
So I was just working on how to attack it, and I got so carried away with how am I going to fix this that I didn't think, oh, I just should write the rest of the book first, which is probably what my next move is, honestly.
Yeah. Once you've got the ending, once you've seen the arc, then it's a lot easier to spot the places where the arc is actually a straight line or a gap.
Yeah, there's big jumps. There's jumps in your arc.
yeah. There's gaps in there, so you got to figure out how you're going to bridge the gaps. And I found places where there was no arc; it was just a flat line that ran for way too long. And so you go in and trim some of those out, or figure out how to actually put the bend in it so that it actually fulfills the purpose of the story.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, thanks for talking so candidly about the process and stuff. I mean, a lot of authors will talk about the process, but it's not rarely have I heard people go into it so personally in some sense, like, with the example of difficulties you had recently, which is, I mean, with last year's writing and so on. So I thank you for that. And now I've got there's another twist to this podcast. I guess I actually did forget to inform you about. I'm such a bad podcaster sometimes. But I sometimes ask the guests what they've been reading lately. Do you read or listen to stuff on the regular?
Oh, I read all the time.
Great.
I read 2 or 3 novels a week. I have to. You can't write if you don't read.
Oh, definitely. I'm fairly slow at reading, but I don't read the way you do. But I do read, fiction most of the time now, like every day now. But it's like I'm so scatterbrained. I have a hard time reading the same book 2 days in a row.
I would say it's always on my phone, so whenever I open Kindle, it's always opens to the place where I left off. So
yeah, no, that's nice. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, and I actually do. I really do like reading on my phone and on my Kindle as well. But so so you can go first. What book have you been reading lately that you'd like to share with us, if you don't mind? Sorry, I should have prepared you for this question.
No, that's all right. Right now,
I usually do. I just blew it.
Right now, I'm reading Carol Van Nada. See, I tend to read authors. So if I find an author I like, I tend to zip through their stuff. Carol, Carol, Van, Vannatta. She has a series. The first book of the series is Overload Flux, I think. Anyway, Carol Van Natta. It's she has a series of their science fiction romances.
Okay.
And they're cool as hell because they have. She's done a really good job with the world building, and so there's a lot of fun stuff happening with people with mental abilities, and how those mental abilities differ among people, and how various political organizations are using those people who have these mental abilities. It's a really nice conceit. I really like the way she sort of took this idea of science fiction romance and melded it with space opera and psychic phenomenon, and I've just been enjoying it. I'm in her third book, and yeah, that's one that I don't have any reservations recommending that.
No, great. Yeah, that sounds actually, I was going to say that sounds very interesting and right up my alley, honestly. I mean, it's the kind of thing I would probably enjoy as well.
See, I only read self-published books these days, so I don't get pulled into whatever Tor's doing or whatever Orbit's
yeah.
or the next big name coming out of Fifth Avenue. It's like I don't go down those paths. So I spend pretty much all my reading time reading self-published authors and talking to self-published authors and finding new self-published authors. I read a ton of space opera. Anything by Glenn Stewart. Anything by Glenn Stewart. GLYNNSTEWART. I really liked his Duchy of Terra stuff. His Hand of Mars was where I learned about him first. But he's got a paranormal series
a little bit
called The Changeling, and it's Onset. That's what it's called. It's fascinating. I read all of his space opera, and then I was talking to him one day, and he says, "You got to try Onset, see if you like it." And I burned through those books in about 6 days. I just
nice.
They were good. So pretty much anything by Glenn Stewart.
Yeah, cool. I mean, that's I want to get it in here because we're running low on time. I want to say because I did manage to finish a book this week. I'm so slow at reading. Well, finishing books. I do read a fair amount, but I don't stay focused on them. But I finally got through. This one's actually an older traditional published book, older for me anyway. I think it came out in 1990 or the late 80s, early 90s, late 80s. It's Wonder Boys by Michael Chabon, and it's literary fiction, which is really rare for me to read. I'm mostly science fiction and fantasy. I don't really like literary fiction that much, but I've had this book lying around for a while, and I finally got through it, and it was really funny. It's a funny book. It's about this guy who's writing a book because it's literary fiction. It kind of those tend to be, but he's writing. But his book is now. He's been writing the book for 7 years. The book's now 3,000 pages long or whatever. It's this huge book, and this is back in the 80s, so he's typing it all out on a typewriter, and he's got the actual pages. And it's a very funny book because his book isn't even any good. The book he's writing is terrible. He doesn't realize it, but it is. I mean, he can't seem to finish it. He's only half done or whatever he says, and it's a really silly story, but it's got some genuinely heartwarming moments in it too. So anyway, pretty good book. I don't know what I'm going to rate it on Goodreads yet, but that's not what this is about. If I rate it on Goodreads, I'm not a huge fan of them. So anyway.
Yeah, I don't. I try to avoid Goodreads myself.
And also I was reading this in print, so I figured why bother?
Oh my God. God,
yeah, I had the print book. That's why I read it. I wouldn't have bought it an ebook of a traditional book,
The non-refreshable cellulose displays. How quaint.
Indeed, it was quite the old-fashioned experience. Though I am surrounded by, what did you just say? Non-soluble cellulose displays.
Non-refreshable cellulose displays.
Non-refreshable cellulose displays. Yes. I guess they are kind of soluble. That was a
they are water soluble. Yeah, that's kind of
as opposed to just the screen just shorts out if you get the water on it.
I suppose I should call them static.
Static, yes, static cellulose displays. There we go. So anyway, so that's what I was reading lately. But now I can go back to reading my usual menu. But a lot of those will also be on cellulose. Anyway, thanks for being on the show, Nathan. Where can people find your stuff, and what should they be looking for from you?
NathanLowell.com has links to everything that I do, including my somewhat daily podcast. And that's probably the best place. Find me on Amazon, Nathan Lowell.
Cool. And what was your latest book name again? The book you just came out with?
The one that just came out is The Wizard's Butler. That's an urban fantasy about an out-of-work EMT who gets hired to become the butler for an old man who is apparently suffering dementia. And the niece, who would like to have his property, hires the butler to make sure that the old man stays alive and doesn't sell the farm or buy it for the next year until she can get him into an assisted living out of state, get him declared incompetent, and get his property. Mm-hmm. So they tell him he thinks he's a wizard. And he that's where the story starts. He thinks he's a wizard.
Sounds good. All right, folks. And you can find my show at mentalcellarpublications.com or on Libsyn. And you can also find all my books on Amazon.com. Look for me under Tim Niederreiter. And if you're on bookfunnel.com, go look for, what was the name of that book? Oh, The Crimson Suitor, which is it's the little novella that starts off the Demon Hunter series, which is my current fantasy series. So, yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. And thanks once again, Nathan, for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right. Take it easy, folks. Talk to you next week.